And welcome back to the Popcorn Conspiracy on Central Coast Radio. Right now, we're going to take a look at one of the big new releases. This is Creed 3, which of course stars and is directed by Michael B. Jordan. This is a follow on of the Rocky franchise, but of course, one of the things that you will notice this time around is this is the first Rocky slash Creed film that doesn't feature Sylvester Stallone. His character Rocky is nowhere to be seen this time around, and Kyle is actually joining me right now as well to talk a little bit about Creed 3. And you're a huge Rocky fan, aren't you, mate?
Oh yeah. I've been a huge fan of the franchise for yeah, quite a few years. It's one of those movies that they're really cheesy, but even the bad ones I still really enjoyed.
Yeah. And how have you
Yeah.
felt about Creed? Like, I know some people out there who are Rocky purists that have just not taken to these Creed films at all. What have you felt about these Creed films?
I actually really liked the turn of basically being a spin-off. I know that when Rocky 5 came out, people really didn't like that one. But then I think Stallone really managed to tie everything together and really bookended the series really well with the sixth movie, Rocky Balboa. And so there was really nowhere else to go with it except for to see Rocky as a mentor kind of character. And
Yeah.
that's what they introduced with Creed was pretty much the perfect continuation of it. I really enjoyed that first movie. The second one, not so much. I actually think that some certain plot elements were really recycled from previous Rocky movies, and I think that the better character arc was actually the villain's character arc, whereas Rocky and Adonis weren't really as interesting in that film. But
Yeah.
what about yourself, David? How much of a fan of the series have you been?
Yeah, look, I was a fan of the original Rocky series. I don't think Creed for me has ever really lived up to the expectations that I thought that it was going to be. And I think part of that is because I saw Southpaw and I really,
Hmm.
really wanted the Rocky continuations to kind of be like Southpaw, and they didn't really get to that point. And like I said, we're going to talk about Creed 3 now. So I'll give a little bit of a rundown for what happens with Creed 3. This time around, Adonis Creed, played by Michael B. Jordan, is on top of the world. He's the world champion and he decides to retire to spend more time with his wife, Bianca, played by Tessa Thompson, and his deaf daughter, Amara, played by Miller Davis Kent. Now, there's a few family problems creeping in there. You can tell that while Bianca is happy being a producer rather than a singer. Of course, you'll remember in the last film, she started to get some hearing problems, so she had to turn to producing. You can tell that she's not 100% happy doing that. And there's also some problems as well with their daughter, Amara. She's starting to get into fights at her special school that she goes to for students that are deaf. Also, at the same time, Adonis is kind of worried about his mother, Marianne, played by Felicia Rashad, who has had a stroke and doesn't seem to be slowing down. Now, you think that he's about to live an easy life now as a kind of boxing promoter and a mentor himself, when all of a sudden a ghost from his past, Damian Anderson, played by Jonathan Majors, returns into his life. Now, there's a huge twist there around the character of Damien, so we won't talk too much about what happens there, but soon we find that Adonis is having his career, family, and even his lifestyle threatened by Damien. Now, mate, one of the things that has always been memorable in Rocky movies has been the villain or the bad guy. How do you see that carrying over here in Creed 3?
I really did enjoy Jonathan Majors in the role as or Dame is kind of like the nickname that they give him.
Yep.
And yeah, it was a really interesting villain character. I mean, the Rocky franchise have always had really interesting villains. And uh yeah, this one it was really great, like one that really did tie into Adonis's history. And I
Yep.
mean, there are hints of what exactly has happened in the past in the trailers. So I'll brush against it just briefly. Just basically they were both going down the same path, and Adonis has basically taken really he has the life that Dame wanted, if Dame hadn't gone to prison. And it was a really interesting take, like kind of a I really liked the way that that Dame has really kind of almost a kind of like he's kind of playing up a bit dopey early on in the movie,
Yeah.
basically to get Adonis to basically do what he wants to do. But then once once he gets the ball rolling, he goes full on threat, and he is like almost a completely different character. And I really enjoyed that, and I really liked just how dangerous he actually came off. I was a little disappointed though, because like something he really just seemed to be out to get Adonis, and he wants to basically take everything from him that he can. But there isn't really much of not much clarification on exactly how he planned to do that.
Yeah.
If Adonis remained retired, like what exactly is he going to do? But other than that, like as a villain, I thought it was really interesting. What did you think of it?
Yeah, that was my issue with the film as well. Was I really think that Jonathan Majors, kind of like he did in Ant-Man, he's one of the strong points of this film, his
Mm,
performance.
mm,
But I don't think they use his character, Damien or Dame, as he's called in the film, quite as much as they should. I mean, he comes in and when you have that little bit of a twist, he suddenly starts saying, "I'm going to take your family and I'm going to take your
yeah,
house and I'm going to take your lifestyle." Well, you don't see any of that. It ends up just becoming a all right, we're gonna fight for the heavyweight title. Um I kind of wanted to see this go in a dark direction, like a Liam Neeson Taken film where because Dame's set up as dangerous. He's got all these
yeah,
criminal connections. We see a photo of him in prison with a whole bunch of guys that look like they wouldn't hesitate at taking out a family. Um, but we don't see any of that. Like I kind of wanted this film to go a little bit darker and for there to be that threat to Bianca and also Amara, which would have worked because the first half of this film sets up about how Adonis retiring is now trying to set up this happy family home. Well, what better way to threaten that happy family home than bringing in a clearly deranged kind of dame to see what's going to happen? For me, the film just never really reached that full potential. And the only thing that I found interesting in the second half of the film was the stylistic choice that Michael B. Jordan and his cinematographer chose to use during that final fight, where all of a sudden the audience and the crowd noise and just completely disappears, and it's just
mm.
the two of them in the ring, almost like a prison setting. I thought that part of it really worked, and I wanted to see more of that, but I wanted to see the film go deeper in its story as well.
Yeah, I really did like to fight the boxing sequences in this movie, particularly the finale one. I mean, when it did the more arty stuff, I did kind of I liked that, but I think it was very different than what we've seen in the other movies. So in that way, it kind of clashes. Um, I did like that it was really like a head to head of these two characters that actually really did feel like they had a history. Yeah, I was a little disappointed myself in, yeah, they really did seem like they almost still wanted Dame to be somewhat redeemable, and I thought that they should have just gone all out with it and been like, no, like these are two very different people, and
Yeah.
Adonis is a very different person than what Dame is. And it also, by trying to make him redeemable, it also kind of conflicts with uh some of the things that Adonis's mother had been doing to try to protect him and keep him from
Yep.
Dame. It kind of it clashes with that. So I didn't really like that. The but the fights, I think that Michael B. Jordan did do an amazing job with his choreographers and cinematographers of just getting those fight scenes to really for you to almost pretty much feel the impacts and the sounds of what it's like in the middle of a boxing ring. I really did enjoy that. I thought that, except for when it some of the special effects when they kind of went a little bit more like slow motion and stuff like that. Those times it felt a little bit more little over choreographed, but when it was just full on two guys duking it out, I thought that was really impressive. What did you think? Did you miss Rocky in this movie? Because I did really kind of feel that in them not wanting to mention him at all, not even to say that he had died or whatever. Really, he's not mentioned at all in the movie, and I think that it really is kind of like an elephant in the room. Like I kind of wish they had just had the balls to just say that he had died in the years since the previous movie.
Yeah, I agree. It came across as kind of unrealistic that Adonis wouldn't have been turning to Rocky for advice, especially with some
Mm.
of the stuff that was happening with his family. I also found it kind of weird that there's a lot of sequences in this where it's supposed to be a boxing television show, and they're talking about Adonis and his life. They never once mentioned Rocky in any
Mm.
of that. Like I would have thought that they would have at least said something like, "Oh, the Rocky trained Adonis Creed" or something like that. It did feel really weird, and I know that there's stuff behind the scenes. The more I've read about it, the more I'm I'm kind of disappointed that Sylvester Stallone's not there, but I understand his reasoning once I've read some of the things that I've read online. But yeah,
Yeah,
it did feel a bit overkill of let's not even mention the guy. Like it's yeah, I mean, without Rocky, there is no Creed film. So
yeah.
to me, there should have been something in there. Like you said, even just a throwaway line mentioning that he died or something like that. The only thing I could think of is because Sylvester Stallone didn't have a writing credit with this film, would they be allowed to kill off his character? Like, would he own rights to that character?
I, as far as I know, um, Stallone came out and said he doesn't actually own any rights to the character.
Okay.
He has a producer credit on this, but I believe that might just be some sort of contractual thing.
Yeah.
I don't think he actually does have any. Like he has the rights to the legacy, and in everyone's eyes, he has a right to the character. But I think on paper, he doesn't actually own anything. I don't think he ever did because
Yeah.
like the first Rocky movie was the movie that got him into Hollywood, and so it's disappointing, I guess, that he wasn't able to wrangle a bit more control since then, a little bit more ownership of the character. But yeah, just I unfortunately I think it was just a, a clashing of egos behind the scenes that kind of hurt this movie a little bit in that way. Because, as you say, they keep mentioning Apollo Creed in this movie, as in, oh, Apollo would be ashamed of you, Adonis. And Adonis never met Apollo.
Yeah.
He never had any connection to him. Rocky was more of a father to him than Apollo was, just out of basic facts.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it really was like an elephant in the room, the whole movie.
Definitely. So, what are you going to give Creed 3 out of 5?
I'm gonna give it 4 out of 5 myself. I still really did enjoy this movie. Like considering I was a little bit disappointed with the previous one, and this being without Stallone even, and it being like a debut film from Michael B. Jordan, I was expecting to dislike this movie a lot more than I did. I can't help but say that. No, I really did. I really did like it. There are some elements that they could have improved upon, but still, I think 4 out of 5 sums up my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. I was really disappointed with the second half of this film, especially after the first half so set up that family storyline between Adonis, Bianca, and Amara. I thought that that was really going to go somewhere. And then, yeah, the second half of the film just became very, very predictable and very bland. So I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. So that's it for what we think about Creed 3. We'll be back in just a moment on Central Coast Radio. You're listening to the Popcorn Conspiracy.